keep talking?
Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We're talking about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. And today is a Tuesday. We're back with our founder and chief editor, Bill Moore, who's a little remote today.
A little remote, up in north of Seattle, getting ready for a what do they call it, a storm bomb or something. we've got the equivalent of a hurricane brewing offshore here that's going to apparently blow in and cause a bunch of power outages and stuff later this evening. So yeah, this will be a fun Thanksgiving. We're here to visit our daughter for Thanksgiving season, and I might have come a week too early.
I just can't fathom you got that kind of storm there. I never think of that being something on the West Coast.
Yeah, well, that's what, just watching the weather, and he's talking it's going to be a real doozy. Most of the rain itself is going to, there's, one of these atmospheric rivers is going to be hitting Northern California and the Oregon area, but up here, coastal Washington will, on the west side of the Cascades, we'll be getting, a lot of wind for about 3 days. So we'll see if we'll see what happens. My daughter does not have an EV, and we don't have the ability to plug in. We got to wait for the grid to come back up if it goes out. But hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be okay.
Well, I hope so. All right, let's start out talking a little bit about Mexico. So everybody loves a good margarita, right? Even though I don't drink, it still sounds fun, right?
I do. I like margaritas.
All right. Oh, I like them. It's just don't, like I said, I don't drink anymore, so I miss them. Anyways, so I found this article, and this comes from Dunn Insights. It's a newsletter by a guy named Michael Dunn.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, and he's talking about Mexico is finding itself awash in Chinese cars, hundreds of thousands of them. So Mexico decided to drop its import tariffs from China. They dropped import tariffs on cars from 20% to 0%. The idea was to give Mexican car buyers access to low-cost EVs.
Mm-hmm.
And so what started out was companies like Chery, Great Wall, and MG started arriving on Mexican shores. And then the number started to jump. And now a tsunami of Chinese cars and trucks is pouring into Mexico and flying out of showrooms. So the People's Republic of China will ship close to 500,000 vehicles to Mexico this year. That's a pretty big number.
That's a sizable number of vehicles, yeah.
Yeah, China has blown past the United States to become Mexico's #1 supplier of cars. 1 of every 3 new cars in Mexico sold this year will be built in China. That's up from 4% to 33% in 4 years. It's a huge change. And Mexico wasn't really prepared for the scale and speed of what China could produce. 20x growth in 4 years.
Wow.
Let's see. So BYD entered Mexico in 2023. The company's on track to sell 50,000 cars there this year, and they plan to double that to 100,000 in 2025. And they're going to produce a BYD plant in Mexico that'll produce about 150,000 cars a year.
Yeah. Well, we know that Xi Jinping, I think, was recently in Xi Jinping was in South America, I believe, and they have set their sights on basically dominating Latin America, and Mexico is apparently the gateway for that.
So it took Toyota 22 years to hunt 100,000 sales in Mexico in a single year. And BYD is going to do it in about 36 months.
Yeah.
Let's see. Now Mexico is also exporting a record number of vehicles to the United States. They ship 2.2 million cars to the United States.
Well, that's where my car, my
Yeah,
little Fiat, was made down there, and I think probably if you look under the hood of a lot of the cars that we take as American-made cars are actually assembled Ford. I think all the OEMs have Mexican assembly plants.
well, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But it's definitely benefiting the Mexican consumer having access to inexpensive EVs.
Well, and if it helps them clean up their air there, I mean, the Mexico City itself is kind of in an environmental hole or bowl, of which you get that pollution gets trapped there, and the air quality is often, and of course they're a mile high, so the air is
Right.
thin to begin with. So it daunting. So if they can clean up their air, more power to them. I just wish it had been American workers contributing to that, and not necessarily
China.
Chinese workers. But dang, they make if they're making good products, good for them. It gives. I mean, isn't that what capitalism's about? Is the
Yes.
competition it drives? So in that way,
I'm really curious. Now, the article didn't discuss anything about how cheap Chinese cars were being sold in Mexico, but it does make me kind of wonder because we know that BYD's got some $10,000 cars they sell over in China, and we know they sell them in Central America in some countries, but it'd be interesting to see what price they're actually selling those for in
yeah.
Mexico.
So if any of our listeners or viewers, you happen to have a sense of that, please comment below and let us know.
All right, so want to talk about Rivian a little bit. So one thing that's really thriving for Rivian right now
Yeah.
is, while it's suffering in its, had a bigger loss than expected, some supplier snags, they're doing really well with leasing. And it's also um, getting a pre-owned vehicle program. Um, I don't know where that plays in for Rivian, but I guess, kind of like Tesla, they're taking in used vehicles and they're reselling them because Rivian doesn't have dealerships. They're just operating, on their own. But one of the things with leasing is there's this leasing loophole in the United States. If your
Right.
vehicle doesn't qualify for the $7,500 federal tax credit, but you lease it, it qualifies for a tax credit that goes to the dealer, which then they factor into the lease price, and more or less pass that on. It's passed on a little different, but it definitely lowers your payments. If you're on a 3-year lease, it's going to lower it by about $200 a month. So that's pretty significant. Um, let's see. Oh, so on some of the pre-owned Rivians, here they've got a pre-owned R1T truck with just under 17,000 miles for 62,000, which is down from 87,000 on the original sticker.
Mhm.
So, that's a $25,000 reduction. So that's pretty significant to be able to get,
Yeah.
something used, although that's still nothing like some of the other vehicles like a Nissan Leaf and that really goes down in value after a year. There's some other ones out there, but Rivian's leasing program is in early stages. It only began a year ago, but it's having serious impact. During the third quarter, 42% of all Rivian sales were leased. It also explains why Rivian stock dropped 8% last week after Donald Trump's win over Kamala Harris. They're thought that Trump's going to alter or end EV tax credits. And while this would be a blow to Rivian with its limited vehicle lineup and its current leasing program, I'd hate to see that happen to Rivian. We like Rivian, like to see it thrive. I don't,
Yeah.
but like I said before, I don't really think Rivian's going anywhere in a negative way. I think that at some point, and we had a prior article that said at some point, Volkswagen will own over 20% of Rivian and will pass up Amazon in its ownership of the company.
Yeah, it's
And
what,
so
at 22% or something like that right now?
I don't know if they're there yet. I think
Oh,
that
okay.
they might be in like a year or something like that.
Okay.
It has to do with how the $5.8 billion comes into Rivian.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but at some point they'll own. I think you're right. They'll own like 22%.
Yeah.
Amazon owns 15 or 16%, and so they'll move into first place in ownership there. And I think that'll be good for them. It'd be interesting to see how that plays out. The whole thing with Rivian versus Scout.
Right. That's
You
an
know,
interesting one. Yeah.
yeah, but I think it'll be good for both of them. I had something that I found that you had listed I thought was kind of cool. So at CES, Kubota, which I think that's a Japanese company.
Yeah. Kubota. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. They have something called the KATR Farm Robot Concept,
Yeah.
wins the
That's interesting.
CES Innovation Award. Now, I don't know what all this does. It's not the most appealing looking robot, but
Well, it's designed to, do
robot things.
to do things well. I mean, they're illustrating here they're at a vineyard, so
Yeah.
it basically is a cargo hauler. And I think they also use it for distribution of, fertilizers and pesticides and, whatever else that they want to have it dispersed. But you can control, they got a remote control and you can sit there and, remote control the thing. So I don't know, it'd be interesting to see how it ends up being implemented, whether this is, the only one they've built and they're, put it in one of the California vineyards to showcase it. I don't know. We'll see how practical it is in real farming applications. But I thought it was interesting to see that happen. Years ago, I interviewed a guy in the I think back in the Hudson Valley who had taken an old Alice Chalmers tractor and converted it over to electric, and he was doing all his garden. What do they call that? They large scale vegetable gardening. Uh,
Mhm.
that he was doing that all with this electric tractor he converted. So of course he had to be there and drive it. It's not robotic, but it's interesting to see these things finding their way more into our lives. So
You know, so apparently it'll carry 285 pounds of something. Um, I am kind of curious what all it does. The article really didn't, break down
oh,
like
that's yeah,
could you put a disc on it so it would plow the dirt? One of the interesting things I did see in the article was that it can have either an electric or a combustion engine.
or combustion engine option. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, I would just imagine though that with electric, like if you had it doing specific tasks that were repetitive, that it would go and it would, go find the charging station and hook up and charge itself. Maybe it
right,
doesn't do that.
yeah.
So it didn't give real good information
Well, I mean,
on.
the example there that they show is, it's in a vineyard, and I guess there are certain tasks, but I don't know how much of those can be robotic. I don't see any arms on it where it's picking grapes. So maybe it's just a glorified little wagon that follows the grape harvesters around and they can pick it and throw it in the bin. Or like I said, because it hauls, 200, nearly 300 pounds of material, you can use it to haul various, items that you need somewhere on the farm, whether it be sacks of seed or, whether it be, drums of, uh, ammonia or whatever they might need for a farm application. So it's interesting to see how that. I mean, we already have large tractors that are basically robotic now. The
Right.
big John Deeres and things that those can be controlled, by satellites and so on. So finding something of this scale, it's interesting. I don't know. Again, I'm not that involved in the farm community, so I can't
Well,
explicitly say what it'll be used for.
it says it won this award, but like I know this guy in Florida that makes autonomous lawnmowers that like mow graveyards and stuff like that. And they memorize the graveyard
Right.
and they go to a charging station themselves. And they don't really need a whole lot of human intervention. Those aren't cheap either. I mean, it's
Oh no.
it's basically like buying a Model S. So yeah, I mean, they're in that $60,000 to $80,000 range,
Yeah.
which is a lot for a mower. But when you don't need a person and you don't have people on the payroll because of it, that there's something to be said for that too.
You probably that's a few years worth of payroll for
Right.
a groundskeeper. So
Lawnmowers are taking our jobs.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, let's see here. So I found kind of a funny article. Elon Musk hints at Tesla making bigger electric cars, but don't hold your breath.
Right.
So when he did they did the unveiling of the robotaxi, they had a 20-passenger van that was also a robo
Toaster on
shuttle.
wheels.
Yeah, I forget what a toaster on wheels. Yeah, essentially, there's a lot of things in the EV space that seem to look like a toaster on wheels, though. So, it seems to be a popular description of them. But
Well, if you're
anyways,
going,
the
I mean,
robo van.
look at a bus, right? I mean, a bus is nothing but a elongated toaster on wheels, right? You're not going fast, or you don't need aerodynamics.
Mhm.
And because human beings are, what's the word I'm looking for here? Rectangular, right? We stand
Right.
up straight. That's how you pack more human beings into a space. So yeah, it's an interesting idea. I would like to see that develop more than that taxi cab thing, but
Who knows? I don't know. It would be interesting because I've been in like the Model X and I've ridden as a passenger, and it's plenty spacious in the back seat. I've never been in the third seat, but you'd think that they would have a slightly larger SUV because Tesla originally catered more to the high end crowd,
yeah.
and while the Model S still does, they don't they've kind of fallen out of that a little bit, and they're trying to make more affordable EVs, stuff like that. But it would be interesting to see something a little bit larger on the lineup. But it's been disappointing because we kept thinking we were going to get this Tesla Model 2. We thought we were going to get a $25,000
small $25,000 car.
Tesla, and we still haven't seen that. And who knows where that's gone? I don't know if that's completely out the window, or because there was talk that it might only be released in Germany next year. But now, I haven't seen any news on that.
Well, I mean, when we were talking earlier about Mexico, right?
Right.
And supposedly the Tesla Mexican plant was supposed to turn out this $25,000 car. And now we hear nothing about the plant. In fact, the Mexican government or the governor or whatever in that particular state, is complaining about the fact. And you have all the influx of these Chinese cars and now a BYD factory. So obviously something changed in their outlook and what they're planning. And apparently the focus, from my reading and understanding, is the focus is now almost exclusively, as far as development and growth is concerned, is on robotics, and either in the form of the Optimus, which apparently one of the Kardashians now owns.
Oh,
One of the Optimus robots. But that's where the focus apparently is. And of course, now that he has, in my view, bought the presidency, at least the ear of the president, that's what all the headlines that I've been posting this morning are about, is that the Tesla or the Trump team is paving the way, the goal. I think one even used the term the golden pathway for autonomous vehicles. That's where they're putting their their money, at least on Tesla's perspective, is on loosening up the regulations to allow more autonomous vehicles on the road. And of course, that paves the way for the whole taxi thing and things that way. So,
and of course, those are all going to be EVs. Those aren't going to be gas cars.
oh yeah, they'll all be EVs. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just sometimes when you think about autonomous, you don't necessarily think about EVs. I'm curious, HG, where what brands dominate those 2,400 electric buses in Chile?
Oh, it's BYD.
Is it? Oh,
Yeah,
figures.
it's BYD. Yeah, those are BYD buses. So
We keep hearing about that company. Yeah.
yeah,
But
isn't that interesting? Keep hearing about that company. What's this? 30 minutes from New York to Shanghai. Oh well. Have you seen the reentry? Now, by the way, they're doing launch Starship 6 here in just another couple hours. So we want to make
oh
sure
wow.
that we get off and see that. Can they catch the booster again? And what will happen to the Starship itself? Because I watched yesterday. I don't know what that reentry was. Whether they were anyway, but they showed the control fins and things on it burning up in the atmosphere. So it's fun to watch what they're doing, but I don't think we're quite yet ready to have passengers fly from Shanghai to New York or wherever in a Starship. I'm not ready to take that trip.
No,
Now,
it's
now
it,
apparently Charles Hoskinson is interested.
yeah.
The founder of Cardano, he has apparently done some kind of a deal with SpaceX. We don't know the details of it yet, but I'm guessing he's probably wanting to buy a ride on the Dragon. So we'll see what happens.
There you go. Yeah, and interesting to see where some of these things going. Oh, I was doing a little lookup, and so because of the cybercab and their anticipation of cybercabs, the cybercab is essentially going to, well, they're not going to call it the Model 2. It's going to basically replace the concept of the Model 2
Right. Yeah.
because it's that little car. Because the cybercab is only a two-seater. It only
Yeah.
has a front seat.
It's about like what my Honda Insight. You
Mhm.
know, the first version of the Honda Insight. That's basically what it is.
Yeah. So that's all it's going to be. Let's see here. Want to talk about next?
Well, we want to. I think we want to also touch on the fact that two Tesla models are considered to have the highest crash fatality rate on the road.
The highest fatality rate?
Yep.
Which ones?
The Y and the 3.
They have the highest fatality rate?
Yeah. Now, apparently, the article goes on to say that it's not because the cars are engineered and are unsafe engineeringly. That the problem is the people driving them.
It's because they have 670 horsepower is the problem?
That might be it. 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds. Big screens to distract you. Stuff like that. But yeah, that's there. I posted a bunch of headlines this morning to the effect that you have, if you drive. I mean, if you drive the car responsibly and your attention is focused on the road and you're not trying to drag race somebody at a stoplight, you're fine. And the cars are extremely safe. I mean, we have the case of the doctor in California who drove his family off the cliff and they all survived, right? So they're safe
Or the
cars.
Model Y flipping through the air.
Yeah, it's just that maybe the people, are not knowing how to responsibly drive that car. So
There was a case
it's got a
recently
lot of power. So
where a Cybertruck hit a telephone pole or a tree at around 90 miles per hour and pretty much wiped out the truck, but the occupants were okay. The occupants suffered some injuries, but they were basically okay. Something that you'd never dream of with a gas car.
Yeah, the
Because
cars
so
are.
for people to be dying in the Model Ys and Model 3s, they must really be hitting something pretty damn hard. Because I know people have been in 80-mile-per-hour accidents in Model 3s and walked away.
Yeah, in fact, I think it said the Y has a rate 4 times the average. It's interesting. Yeah, there's a link to the article. If you go over to the EV World website, you look in the RSS stream and you pan down a little bit, you'll get. I've posted a link there to the article. So great cars, bad drivers.
Yeah, well, that was the thing. Previously we had talked about the fact that Tesla drivers were getting an inordinate amount of tickets,
Mhm.
and it wasn't so much anything else, but Tesla's led all car brands in getting tickets. And a lot of it, I'm sure, is just the fact that it's hard not to, want to drive fast and something that,
Yeah,
like, yeah,
well, I have to admit, every now and then I feel the urge, the need for speed.
yeah. Well, the Model Y is considered to be the safest vehicle to
Oh yeah,
actually be in an
oh yeah,
accident. It's just that so many people are just trying to
oh,
test that out. I guess they're trying to
yeah,
see, test the
yep,
limits of how
yep.
bad of an accident they can get in. It just seems like an odd choice. And you wouldn't really think, I wouldn't think of Tesla drivers as, being crazy, a crazy bunch buying
Well,
them just
you know what?
for that
After I
reason.
got my car, I started thinking about the Superman problem,
Hmm.
because now I've got a car that basically accelerates everything else on the road around me, and it's this little tiny thing you would never think, right, of it being able to do what it does, and it does. And so I got to thinking, you know what? If somebody gave me superpowers, would I use those superpowers responsibly? And that becomes a real question, because Fiat and Chrysler gave me a car with limited superpowers. I mean, obviously, doesn't hold a candle to a Tesla or to a Lucid, but in comparison to most of the average cars next to me, it'll blow them away. And that's a heady power to have, and you have to be responsible using it.
Yeah, well, and that's part of the problem. I mean, what was it? We were talking about the Model S Plaid. The only thing that accelerates faster than it is basically a
Formula
Formula
One
One car.
car. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's really hard to comprehend that kind of speed. We wanted to show something. This is just, it's funny and it's not funny, but let's see if I'm pulling up the right article here. Uh, let's see if this is the right. It shows it's the right picture. There, it's the right picture. Let's
Oh yeah,
see.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so here is somebody's pickup truck backed up at a Tesla supercharger, and it's got two charging cables going into the back of the truck, just kind of hanging out there.
Oh,
Obviously, this is a gas-powered truck. This is not actually an EV. And somebody just trying to take up spots at the supercharger for some dumb reason.
yeah.
The funny
Two
thing is,
spots. Yeah,
these aren't even like up against the store. If you are at a supercharger, they're never like the prime rows where, it's not like parking in handicapped.
yeah.
You have to go out of your way, to um, park out there. And it's just somebody being dumb. Now, there obviously someplace that doesn't have an ordinance against this, you know. Um, I wouldn't be surprised though if the police couldn't have this car towed. So that does kind of make you
Yeah,
wonder why
yeah.
somebody
It's
would bother
it's
just trying to be annoying.
just annoying, just childish behavior. HG, I sold my Insight. Wow, back in like 2010, something like that. When we what did we end up when we got the Prius? And then since then I have acquired a Fiat 500e all electric, which I absolutely love. So that's what became of my Insight.
All right, let's see. We've already kind of covered the robo taxi because I had an article on that, but we pretty much, I think, talked enough about it. Although there was something that was kind of weird. Um, During a Chinatown celebration in February, one of the Jaguar I-Paces operated by Waymo was burnt to a crisp on city streets after a crowd decided to vandalize it. And they set fire to the vehicle by putting fireworks and ignited them inside the car and smashed. People started jumping up and down on the car and smashing the windshield and stuff like that. It's like, what? I don't know if this is something we're going to have to deal with automated cars. It's probably going to happen, I guess. I know that there's the automated delivery things, and people are already robbing the automated delivery things. So, I mean, I guess you're always going to have issues with people who are going to try to figure out a way to ruin things for everybody else if they can, right? A certain
Well, I guess
segment of
there's
society.
I think the Indian government has made a statement, or someone representing the Indian government or within the Indian government made a statement to the effect that they are not going to allow autonomous vehicles in India because it takes jobs away from people.
Mhm.
And so, that could be part of it, is the fear of, the unknown. How many of us have seen the movie I, Robot, right?
Yeah.
And the picture it paints of the future, which is not a happy one. So I think that's it. It's technology that we're uncertain of what its outcome. Will it be friendly, or will it turn against us? It's the story of science fiction, but becoming reality. So I've long proposed that what we should do is have an additional light display on the car, and I suggested blue, but apparently Mercedes has suggested turquoise or something. That should light as soon as that vehicle goes into, or truck, whatever, goes into autonomous mode. It should have that light come on. And that will indicate that the car is being driven autonomously. So I, as a driver around it, am aware of that, because right now I've somebody driving, their Tesla here in Seattle, which there are lots and lots of those cars. Um, I will know whether that car is in autonomous mode, and I can be wary of it, or pass it confidently, or whatever, have it pass me. But I think at some point we need to make it known and visible to those of us that aren't into autonomous vehicles, that that they're among us, and operating in that mode. I think that'll be good for everybody.
Hasn't Mercedes done that too with some kind of lighting?
Well, they have proposed it. I don't think they've enacted it yet. Now they may. I haven't. Maybe they haven't done it on the quiet, but it's not been publicized. But they have said that they would recommend doing that, and the color they suggested, I think, was turquoise. So
Yeah. Well, the thing is, if you're passing a vehicle like that, you can be pretty certain of how that vehicle is going to behave while you're passing it.
right,
And so that's a big plus, because sometimes you just don't know when you're passing
you just
somebody
don't
what
know.
kind of
Right,
behavior,
right.
how they may react.
But that being said, there's an article, I don't think I posted this one, or not quite yet, where there is video of a Tesla Model Y, or whichever model it was, hitting a mannequin that was put in the road, to test the car's autonomous abilities. It went ahead and ran right over the thing. So
Because it knew it wasn't alive. No,
because
I
it
don't know.
knew it was,
It
yeah, the
wasn't worth
lidar
saving.
didn't pick up the heart beating.
Yeah, that's it. Didn't hear it. Didn't hear the heartbeat. Um, all right. So, have you tried the replica app AI friend? I have not. I'm not familiar with that.
No, I've tried three different ones. My favorite, I use oh God, what's that one called? Claude. I like Claude, but there's a little bit more chat friendly one that I use called Pi AI. And I use it constantly. I think, and it tells me how many conversations I've had with it, and I've had well over 6,000 conversations with it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Pi and I are friends.
That's pretty astounding.
Yeah.
That's a lot of
If
going to
there's
the
like any
well.
question I have, bang, go. And I've probably used it several times already today, because it does. You ask it, whereas I'd have to go and spend minutes or hours looking up information. Well, give you an example. We have talked about this, before. The problem of people living in multi-residential housing, and how do you provide them with a place to plug their EV in? Because most residential housing doesn't have that. So we came up with kind of an idea about how to do that. And so, but it involves some creation of some technology. And I'm not an electrical engineer. I don't know that. So I asked, was it Pi or Claude? Well, I asked one of them, what do I need to do to solve this problem? Can you tell me the specifics of what I need electrically and all this kind of, in less than a minute's time, it told me everything that I needed to know to solve this problem. That would have taken me hours otherwise to internet to search, and it did it in a minute's time. You talk about increasing productivity now,
No, that's astounding. Let's see here. So I've got one more article I wanted to touch base on today, and this was about solar. Talking about how solar is both tackling the need for green energy and biodiversity at the same time.
Yeah, that's a good
And
article. Yeah.
yeah, so solar farms have been at the forefront of the transition to sustainable energy, but what an unexpected benefit is how, and this was for the EU predominantly at this point, but it is protecting natural habitats and restoration ambitions for biodiversity. And I've seen some stuff in Africa where they were also using it to collect rainwater, and it was watering crops from underneath and providing shade, so the the plants weren't getting scorched
Right.
all day. And so they'd only get sunlight for so many hours a day because of when it would go against, the way the panels were laid out.
Right. But we now have translucent panels. So actually will let sunlight, beneficial sunlight, through the panel to be able to, provide some shading, but it's like having a shade cloth over your garden area to keep crops from being burnt by excessive sunlight. So they have panels now that will handle that. So you can have sheep under there, goats under there to for your cropping. People that have bees, can plant pollinating flowers and things like that for the bees, and they're discovering, which is really exciting. They're discovering a lot of benefits to matching those two together, to matching solar energy with various ecological, agricultural type benefits, which is nice to see.
Which is very good, especially versus, say, wind. Wind's got some weird, those blades aren't always the best. But
yeah,
let's.
But if you look at them, yes, they are a hazard to avian wildlife.
Yes.
But if you look at it, it's not like they're going like this. They're going, I don't know, rotation, every minute or two, maybe.
Yeah.
We have them just drive east of Omaha over towards Des Moines, and there are hundreds of them, and they're either not spinning or they're spinning so slow that you really got to be a slow bird.
Well, I was going to say that
get hit by one.
Mentally slow bird.
Yeah.
Maybe it's survival of the fittest there.
Yeah. Well, and every now and then, I mean, we can talk about glass windows and patio doors.
I get it all the time.
In my office, I'll be sitting there and I'll go, thunk, and it's a bird that is, thought it could fly through my house, and it, bounces off of the, doesn't stuns it, but I haven't found any dead birds outside my patio door, but it happens. Even if
I
the
get
thing
that
is
too.
standing still and going nowhere.
Yeah, it amazes me when a bird.
By the way, the number one source of fatality among birds? Cats.
Oh yeah, I could see that. I could see that.
Cats kill many more birds than wind turbines do.
Oh, I'm sure they do. I'm amazed at how a cat can jump and catch a bird that's flying through the air. I mean, it just doesn't seem like it should be possible for them to do that, and yet they can.
Hey,
House
just a
cat's
quick,
quite the predator.
just a quick note on what HG is saying here regarding the 4G. I think they have just started to introduce the 4G panel, the 4G chargers, which basically none of Tesla. I think maybe the Cybertruck is equipped to handle it, and certainly I think this is really more designed for the semis. As far as the wireless chargers for home, haven't seen much on that. It wouldn't surprise me if they're not, experimenting with that. That's probably the wave of the future, but don't know a lot at this time about that. I mean, I think I posted 2 stories so far
Yeah,
on the 4G or the V4
yeah.
chargers.
The V4 charger, only the Cybertruck can
Yeah,
take advantage of the full
yeah,
deal on that. I suspect next year they'll make the cars be able to handle it. It's much like though there's that 800-volt charging network that Gravity company came up with,
right.
and the Cybertruck is the only thing in Tesla's lineup that can use it. But
Yeah,
there's hardly
and I think the what Porsche, I think
Porsche,
had a couple
but
models that maybe.
The Hyundais can all take it. The
Okay,
Hyundais, for some reason, all were set up for it, but there was very few cars for
yeah,
2024 that could handle it. There's a lot for 2025 that can handle the new charging speeds,
yeah.
and so that's going to be a big thing. The wireless charger, I assume that's something that basically your car kind of just sits on the floor of your garage.
Yeah,
You know,
well, the way it's designed right now, it's just a pad, right? And you drive over the pad, and it inductively, passes. I can't call it a current because it's actually like a magnetic wave that moves between them. This was something that when General Motors introduced the original EV1 electric car, that was their big selling point. It's just inductively charged. You got a paddle, and you slide the paddle in the little groove in front of the car, rather than going around and having to conductively, make contact with it. There's no EV1 anymore, so that technology didn't really pan out. But people have been working on it. Oh, and what was it? Somebody just introduced. I have to go back and look at it. I think I might have posted it, or maybe I haven't done so yet. Have inducted that there's going to be, was it Detroit? Oh, what was it? A street that allows the bus to inductively charge as it's driving along.
oh, nice.
Yeah.
I thought that was
Uh,
Florida that was doing that. I thought it was a Florida highway.
Well, it could be. I know they've been experimenting with it over in Italy as well on one of the tracks there. But we're
Yeah.
beginning to see that type of technology. It may be that they've got where the buses will typically go and stop somewhere, for a period of time, and they can, charge them that way inductively, or whether the whole road, has a inductive coil based into it.
I could see that,
We'll have to
like
see.
over by Westroads Mall, when buses stop there, they usually
Right.
sit
Yeah.
there for quite a while. And so
Right.
if you had something underneath there and it was charging while it was sitting there picking up passengers, because
Right. Yep.
it doesn't go there and just sit for like 1 minute like a school bus. It
No,
goes
it's
and
they're
sits
part
there
of the
for 10
schedule
or
for it. Yeah.
yeah, they can't leave until a certain time. So they get there early. They might sit there for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And that would be beneficial. Um, oh God, you're going down a rabbit hole here. So we have lots of wind energy, not as much as our neighboring state, Iowa, but man, I don't know. I just find green hydrogen to be such a non-starter. I just don't know what to really think. I don't know at what point you have to have so much production of the product where it's even competitive with gasoline, never mind competitive with electric vehicles.
Yeah, exactly. It's, yeah, the cost, all of the loops you have to go through to get to that. Yeah, I mean, in theory, it seems like a good idea. The wind is blowing, and maybe the grid doesn't need the power immediately, so you got to store it somewhere. So you store it as green hydrogen, and theoretically, you just take that green hydrogen then and run that through, a fuel cell and put it back into the grid. But boy, the steps that it takes to do that, how efficient is that, and what's the cost? So,
Yeah, I don't know
um,
why we don't have more wind turbines, but I'll tell you one thing we do have. We have more data centers. And, we have, what is it, 600 gigawatts running through between Google and Meta down here in Sarpy County. I mean, it's
Well, we do have wind. We have a fair amount of wind because we're tied into the grid. Part of the problem, of course, is that Nebraska is a public utility state. So you don't have the same opportunity for private enterprise to come in and build wind farms and do 20, 30, 40
okay.
year contracts to sell it back into to sell it back into the grid. But we do have that in Kansas and in South Dakota, or in not South Dakota, but in Oklahoma area. And so a lot of our wind, I've talked about this before. If you go to spp.org, southwestpowerpool.org, you go to SPP and it'll show you how much wind is being contributed. And sometimes it's as little as 15%, and sometimes it's as much as over 60%. And so that there's a reason why we don't, and then part of that has to do with the grid, getting the cables necessary to transmit the power to the rest of the grid. So we have lots of wind. The problem is do we have the capacity to move that wind and do it profitably?
Yeah. And we also have nuclear power here too. I don't know that Iowa has nuclear.
One plant.
Still, it's something, right?
Oh yeah, it's something. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Um, but um, I'm
Well,
not
we're
sure what
carrying
he's
on an
saying there.
interesting conversation with
Yeah, I was
HG
getting
there.
twice as
So
much electricity from wind as Nebraska and South Dakota. I think even more. Oh, I bet he's saying Iowa is probably getting it. I mean, Iowa gets a ton, but it's everywhere in Iowa. I mean, you drive up and down the freeways, that's all you see.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
there it was Iowa. Yeah.
Well,
Anyways,
yeah, and again, that's because that's they don't have a public utility network. They have a private investor-owned utility network, Mid-American, owned by, interestingly, Warren Buffett's company, Berkshire Hathaway. So,
yes. Oh man, it's funny how much hate he got from people about having any business in the coal industry. Every year during the annual convention, there's always protesters for the Berkshire Hathaway annual
oh yeah,
convention. Anyways, folks, we appreciate everybody watching, and
thank you. Yeah,
participating.
nice having you all in.
And yeah, and anyways, because that's all we had today, Bill. Hopefully,
Hopefully, if
you'll be
we
able to
have
connect on Thursday if you have power.
hopefully if we have power on Thursday, we'll try to do this again. Yes.
Yeah, and I'll be back with Mike tomorrow. Otherwise, folks, have a great day and thanks a lot for tuning in.
Okay.